What's really harming them is that right now, whether you're talking about a Google AI overview, ChatGPT, or Perplexity, depending upon which platform you're talking about, the click-through rate from those AI generated response at best in specific industries on only one platform, it's as high as 8 and as low as 1%. So even though the activity is still there, it's not leading to traffic. So not yet. So the first panic thing that is happening is businesses are saying, "Oh my gosh, I have to replace this traffic."
Hey, Guy Powell here, and welcome to the next episode of the Backstory on Marketing and AI. If you haven't already done so, please visit ProRelevant.com and sign up for all of our episodes and podcasts. I'm the author of the upcoming book, The AI Marketing Machine, and get ready, it is close. And you can learn more about that at marketingmachine.prorelevant.com. Today, I'm interviewing Tim Woda, and he is the founder and CEO of White Peak Marketing. Let me tell you a little bit about him, and then we'll get off to the races here. So, Tim is a serial entrepreneur and SEO pioneer. He's the founder and CEO of White Peak Marketing, and he's based in Reno, Nevada. He's driven hundreds of millions of users to websites and successfully scaled multiple high growth internet startups. Welcome, Tim. It's so good to have you.
Before we go any further, a quick pause. This is important. Your sales force is one of the most expensive investments in your company. The real question isn't who's likely to buy someday, it's who should be called right now to create the most value. Traditional propensity models tell you who might convert. Our prescriptive modeling, called COPA, tells you who will convert because you called them. If you manage a large sales organization and want higher conversion, bigger deals, and better use of every rep hour, let's talk. If you want your sales team focused on the calls that matter most, visit prescriptivemodeling.prorelevant.com and set up a short strategy session.
Yeah, it's a great honor to be with you.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a hot space. The SEO now morphing or adding on to AEO and GEO. But before we get into that, tell us a little bit about your personal backstory on how you got involved in AI and marketing.
Yeah, well, of course it's new to all of us because it's new. But I got involved in marketing as an entrepreneur myself. Gosh, since as long as I can remember, I've been involved in the startup world. My past experience before being an agency owner was being on founding teams that would start tech related businesses, and my the hat that I wore was always to grow the business. And I have to confess, I am an accidental agency owner. Never in a million years, Guy, did I ever think I would own and run a digital marketing agency because, quite frankly, I have fired every agency that I've ever attempted to hire before I started my own agency. And we always handled things in house, and we did quite well. And those businesses had successful exits. And in 2016, I was involved in an exit, and I was kind of trying to figure out what was the next thing I was going to do. And someone came to me from my professional network and said, "Hey, Tim, would you like to run our growth for our law firm?" It's a big, big law firm with 395 lawyers out in the Midwest. And um, I had no interest in working at a 100-year-old law firm, but I said, "I'll tell you what, I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do next." And this was an acquaintance of mine who I had a great relationship with, and his name was Whitney. And I said, "Whit, I will be happy to help you guys develop your strategy and your plan and put the pieces in place so you can do this." And during that period of time, I discovered that what I didn't realize at the time, for any business, was that they didn't have the ability to execute on anything well. They were a law firm. I mean, that was they didn't know about digital. And so I was constantly referring them to people that I knew in my professional network who could help them take things across the finish line and do it well. And a light bulb went off after many months, about 4 or 5 months. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm so dumb. I should have put these people on payroll instead of just referring all this business out. And so that's when I got the idea, hey, maybe this is not an isolated situation. And I started, poking around and realized, look, there's a tremendous opportunity because so many agencies were being run by people who had, um, maybe at the principal level, they had, the those that led the agencies were probably very, very knowledgeable and very capable with digital marketing, but so many of them were staffed with people that we would describe as generalists, right? And and so that I realized that was kind of why I had always fired them, right? Because I said, well, would I hire the person working on my campaign to run my internal marketing? And the answer was no. And so I was like, well, I got better people, right? And so I realized that that was really where the opportunity was. And so when I started White Peak, that was the first thing I did was I said, I got to have a team where every person on the team is a specialist at what they do. Like they are a rock star at their position on the field. And that's what we did. I did, and the business has done great over the last 9 years. Um, so I never thought I'd be here, but this is what I'm doing.
Fantastic. Well, it's a great story, and you're so right. Having really people that know what they're doing in their lane, but also they have to have some generalists, but they really, if they're good at what they do, that makes such a difference. So
Yeah,
fantastic,
and
and
this
kudos
is
to you.
it's nothing against generalists, right? I'm not trying to throw them all under the bus. All of us at some point, on some level, generally understand beyond our specific silo. But I think the other thing that was really helpful is because my background was in building my own businesses. What has allowed White Peak to do is when we go into a client and we're talking to them about one thing, we're able to go, hey, this is going to have implications over here. And I know this because I've run 4 businesses. And have you thought about how you're going to handle it when you get more leads? No, I never thought about that. I thought I'd just sell them. Okay, well, do you have the capacity to do it? No. Okay, well, hold on. So I think that the having worn the hat of the clients has been a big asset for us as well. I think it's
Yeah.
important to be able to help people actually execute on the success, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, it's funny and now with AI things are changing, but they're not that big a change, but there's definitely some major changes in certain areas, and certainly SEO is one of those,
Yeah.
and I think
AI is,
Gartner is
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's unavoidable now, right? Like there was
Yeah.
a few minutes where you could go, oh, maybe it won't affect my business, but now it's affecting everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the big areas is SEO, search engine optimization, and Gartner is potentially saying that it could drop by 25%. And you wonder, on the one hand, you wonder whether what that's going to do for the Google slash Alphabet stock price. But on the other hand,
Mhm.
well, hey, life is tough. There's a new technology out there. And so tell me what's going on. Where and what and how is search going to be changed? Is it going to be AEO or GEO or XYZEO? I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Well, okay. So first of all, I think Gardner has revised their numbers and now says that by 2028, it could be as much as 50%. In
Mm,
some industries, it's already as high as 70% of organic traffic has been replaced. Where I think the biggest changes, and we can all relate to this as a user, um, we used to have to go to Google, we'd ask a question, and we would then have to mine through the search results and read through stuff on various different sites to get the answer, right? And we now we don't have to do that, right? So we ask a question, we get the answer, we move on. So um, I read a study that just showed that through August of last year, that of the traffic which businesses are losing, 88% of it is top of the funnel traffic, which certainly makes sense, right? It's the informational searches where someone hopes to introduce their brand and that traffic's disappearing, and I think it'll accelerate, not decelerate. Um, what is really alarming for not what I'll call non-branded businesses, right? Not the Nikes, the Coca-Colas, the Timberlands, but like the businesses that we don't know the name of. What's really harming them is that right now, whether you're talking about a Google AI overview, ChatGPT, or Perplexity, depending upon which platform you're talking about, the click-through rate from those AI generated response at best in specific industries on only one platform, it's as high as 8% and as low as 1%. So even though the activity is still there, it's not leading to traffic. So not yet. So the first panic thing that is happening is businesses are saying, "Oh my gosh, I have to replace this traffic." And I actually think, and this just goes back to my experience in some other businesses, which I started a handful of years ago. I think that in and of itself, the panic of replacing traffic has the potential to be an existential threat for many businesses. And the reason isn't that they can't find more traffic. The problem is that their financial models, their business models are based or built, their entire businesses are based upon traffic costing a certain amount of money, right? Well, if you look at Google Ads, just as a proxy for kind of looking at the dynamics of this situation, year in and year out, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5% average price increase for the average cost per click across Google for many years. Not wildly off of what you would see with inflation, but a little bit more. Last year, it went up over 84%. Okay. Because everybody panicked and they said, "Oh my gosh, rightfully so, I need to replace traffic," right? So the problem is their business model is not based upon the exorbitant prices and the same thing is happening across, Meta and LinkedIn and everywhere. The real problem is that people are going to start investing in traffic that is exorbitantly expensive now. Their models don't account for it. And because they reacted and went for traffic first, anytime you go into a new traffic place, a new place to get traffic, inevitably you're not the best that you're ever going to be at it on day one, right? And what we're seeing is that clients are ruling out new traffic sources very quickly by saying, I can't afford to operate in this new world with this new traffic source. And they're doing it when the traffic source may be a perfectly viable traffic source. They just did it in the wrong order. We think that in order for the non-branded business to survive, before they put all their eggs in that basket that says, "I got to go replace this traffic," they need to look inwards and they need to say, "What's my average engagement time on my website? What's my bounce rate? What's my conversion rate? What's my monetization rate? What's my lifetime value of a customer? What percentage of my customers refer someone to me? What's the size of my average client?" They need to look at monetization of their business and they need to get their house in order because first of all, things are more expensive, right? Cheap traffic isn't here anymore. Number one. Number two, as they turn their attention to explore new traffic sources. Guy, if you and I are in the exact same business and we both go to get the exact same traffic, and you've got your numbers locked in, and so you're able to monetize traffic better than me, I'm going to bounce out of that place a loser, and you're going to survive as a winner. And I'm going to be saying, "Well, that traffic source wasn't any good." And you're going to say, "Man, I'm glad Tim doesn't know his business," right? "I'm glad Tim doesn't know what he's doing." And so we're going to see this. This is an existential threat, in my opinion, to businesses that don't kind of take an inward look. We've seen this before. If you go look at the Fortune 500 in 1990, and then you fast forward 20 years, what you find is 40% of the brands that were amongst the 500 best companies in the world, those brands don't exist anymore. The number one reason is that at the time, and this goes, you can look at any 20-year segment, the number one reason why they don't survive is because there's been technological change and they didn't adapt to it, and a new
Mhm.
player came in and said, I know how to adapt to this. And so if it
Yeah.
happens to the biggest and best, it's going to happen to small businesses. And I think we're only at the beginning of seeing what's going to happen here. It'll be really interesting. I think there's going to be a lot of consolidation in a lot of sectors because of this. And then there's going to be a whole bunch of new players that show up, even in small to medium sized businesses that have put an AI mindset and said, I'm going to play in the new world. And I got to figure out my math first. So anyway, that's the big change we see.
Quick pause. This is important for any marketing leader. Marketing must continuously prove its value or the budgets dry up. Marketing mix models provide that proof in a way finance and leadership can believe. And we at ProRelevant help teams answer critical questions. Which campaigns actually worked? Which channels really moved the needle? And where should the next dollar go? With over 20 years of experience across complex marketing environments, we know how to deliver clarity, not guesswork. To learn more, go to mmm.prorelevant.com and set up a short strategy session. And now, back to the podcast.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
No, and that makes a lot of sense. But although, I have questions in my mind as you were talking. I mean, one is that the economy hasn't slowed, so to speak.
Not at all.
Let's assume that it just stays the same. So that means that people are still buying the same amount of stuff.
That's right. That's right.
So when I go searching for something, and me being, let's say, the royal we in this case, when I go searching for something today, well, I take that back. When I want to get an answer to a question today, I just type in the question, and in Google AI Overview gives me an answer, or ChatGPT, and I haven't clicked on any site. I was
That's
probably
right.
never going to click on a site and buy something just based on that information search. So
That's right. Because this
therefore,
is top of the funnel.
so fair enough. But then before, I would type in a question, and I'd kind of phrase the question maybe differently, and then all of a sudden I'd have to search through a handful of
Yep.
sites myself. And then, I don't know, maybe I would get enticed for something to buy something. Well,
Mhm.
to me, that in the second case, the pre-AI, that traffic was more or less worthless anyway, because I wasn't going to
Well,
convert anyway. I just wanted to get
well,
an answer to my question.
if you, and I'm going to oversimplify the world, right? You've got high intent traffic and low intent traffic, right? That's kind of what you're describing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What we're seeing is, we're not seeing a drop off in people's revenue. And matter of fact, there's a jerky company I just met with yesterday, and their conversion rates are going through the roof. Their sales are going through the roof. Everything's going through the roof, and their traffic is plummeting. And they're like, I don't understand why. And to your point, the low intent traffic isn't hitting their site as much, so it's making things look good, right? And so in terms of conversion rates, now what it requires for us as SEOs is to say, okay, I need a lot of SEOs, and I would argue in-house SEOs probably suffer from this more so than agencies. Um, don't realize that SEO should be practiced at all different levels of the buyer journey, right? So if I'm still visible in those high intent searches, I'm still going to get my sales and all as well. Where it's a problem is for businesses that are not so much like jerky, right? They might be selling software, or they might be selling a B2B service, or they might be selling a more of a considered purchase, where my early searching really isn't about buying. It's around discovering who the players are. What are the possible solutions for my problem? And it's in that phase that a whole sector, a whole bunch of businesses introduce their brand to a potential buyer for the first time, right? And so if they've done their job well, when someone comes onto their site, they're not ready to pull the trigger. They've created an awareness and they've established some credibility so that as that party goes down the buying journey over a period of time, that's now someone who they might be looking at or considering, or has at least the snowball's chance in Hades to winning the business. Today, if they don't show up in the AI search, their brand never gets introduced to that
Mm.
potential buyer. So I agree with you on many levels. Like the jerky company, they're not really affected, right? But if I'm selling ERP software and I'm not a big, huge player, it may very well affect me. So it just depends upon your
Yeah.
industry.
Yeah, and
God,
that makes a lot of sense. I mean, so the low intent and the high intent. So the high intent buyer, that traffic is probably not changing. But to your point,
yet.
if the low intent didn't lead to a brand impression, so to speak, then you will not be in the consideration set for the high intent buyer searcher. And therefore,
That's right.
then the brands that either have a better brand or were able to better, make themselves be known in the low intent search space, then those are the ones that are going to succeed. And those that fail in the low intent searches are then going to fail in the high intent searches because they're just
Yeah,
not
and
going to
this is
show
gonna,
up.
but this is gonna trickle down to the jerky guy real soon. So I think it was in December. Um, Google essentially opened up a pathway for AI bot shopping. Okay. Early stages of this. We'll see what gets invented and what people do with this. But imagine a scenario where my wife gives me a list of things she wants me to get picked up. Hey, I need some of this. I need some of that. Don't forget to get your mother this present, blah, 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 blah. Well, what hasn't existed is the ability to go to a tool, an extension, an app, or whatever, and put in, hey, I need some flowers for my mom. I need to get that, that camping stuff, blah, 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 whatever. And then walk away and allow an AI bot to go find, shop, and purchase the product. Well, Google just opened up the capacity for that type of product to now be developed. So now all of a sudden it makes a big difference if that when, because I think that's, this is going to come fast. Um, when someone who's selling jerky is impacted, because if you don't have visibility to that AI bot,
Yeah.
it's not going to run that gauntlet to come out with a purchase on the other side. So I think it's when, not if, it's going to impact those less considered purchases. It's going to happen in a slightly different way because they have a different buyer journey.
Hmm.
Ultimately,
Yeah.
when it's all said and done, not having visibility is going to be a problem, right? Like we know
Yeah.
that's going to be a problem. It's a timing issue. So I think regardless, everyone's going to be impacted. I would say the most immediate thing that someone should be focusing on is maximizing their monetization rate, their buyer journey, their ability to get upsells, cross sells, lifetime value of the customer. That stuff it's low hanging fruit because every business can do that, right? Like it just requires effort in a world where traffic's been so cheap and easy to get. And I know many entrepreneurs would say, "What are you talking about? It's not easy to get." Compare it to what it is now. With it has been. I think that that's the low hanging fruit that people need to make sure they
Mm.
don't ignore while they're trying to figure out what the world of AI is going to look like. Because let's face it, a year from now, it probably will look different than it does today. But what
So
won't change
therefore,
is their metrics need to be good on their site.
yeah,
That
yeah. So
that won't
therefore,
change.
there's a handful of new types of KPIs in search that need to be
Yeah,
looked at in terms of getting awareness
yeah.
and building the brand up at the low intent searchers, and then for the high intent searchers is making sure that however that
You're
happens, that you're
converting
part of
those.
that, you're part of that
Yeah.
result there.
I was gonna say, everybody kind of thinks about conversion rate, and that's kind of the easy, monetization for dummies kind of go-to answer. And that's not untrue. I think what people don't recognize is that there's good conversion and there's better conversion, right? And you see this a lot with e-commerce where, I use a Shopify store as an example, right? A Shopify shopping cart, unless you're on the Shopify Plus plan, you can't really customize the shopping cart very much. But you can go get an app that introduces upsells and cross sells after the person puts in their credit card and before the thank you page that actually says kind of the equivalent of what McDonald's does when you order a cheeseburger. Would you like fries with that? Right. And still a conversion, but now all of a sudden you add it to the order, right? There's lots and lots of ways that people can improve monetization, whether it's e-commerce or whether even if it's service-based businesses. You
Yeah.
can there's
So
we that's something that we want to see people try to take advantage of now more than ever.
I really love your concept of the low intent, high intent purchasers. And now, one of the things that you said was, if in the low intent, if I'm not somehow building my brand, now certainly there are many ways to build the brand, and certainly building the brand so that you are aware and that you somehow get into the consideration set is pretty critical for when that
Yeah.
high intent search takes place. So if that's the case, then that would mean that there's a shift in the mix to either shift to different media where it's less expensive to get those brand impressions to get you into the consideration set, or which then means I'm going to do less paid search because it's not paying off because the other channels are less expensive. Is that where you kind of see things going then, or is
Yeah. Internally, we kind of have this little joke that SEO now stands for search everywhere optimization. um, so, for example, in ChatGPT, far and away the number one source for cited information is Reddit, right?
yeah,
Great example, right?
yeah,
So Reddit is costless for a business to participate in, and it's massive amount of traffic, and it's a different model, it's a different experience, but people use it, right? And so brands need to ask themselves, what are we going to do to optimize our visibility and our participation within Reddit? Um, as just one example, right? I mean, there's others. Um, YouTube continues to be the second most popular search engine in the world, right? So brands need to be asking themselves, what can I do to introduce my brand into buyers on YouTube? Like it's not costless to produce a YouTube video, but it's uh, a very viable channel. The cost tends to be more on the production side, right? Like, let's be honest, right? But take our business is taking their blog content, which feels like today half the time it's just training AI models, and creating a bunch of video shorts where
yeah.
from that content. That's they just people we need to be thinking about how do we optimize everywhere and not just for Google is really the point.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And it's funny, and maybe I'd love to hear your comments on this. One of our clients just started being active in Reddit and actually advertising on Reddit. And
Mhm.
the reason that we're assuming is that if you're advertising on Reddit, you're going to generate conversation and other things that happen on Reddit, which is then going to feed ChatGPT, which is then going to build your brand. Is that kind of how you see that? Will advertising on Reddit do that, or is that a lost cause, or still a TBD?
I think all one man's trash is another man's treasure, right? So it's all about how well you do it. Um, you're going to have people that are going to, in panic mode, they're going to say, well, let me buy some ads anywhere I can get, FaceTime with somebody. And I know that can go great or it can go terribly. So it comes down to if your client is saying, I want to advertise on Reddit, Do they have someone helping them or internally that has any experience doing this? Reddit is a perfectly viable advertising channel. Um, I've advertised on and off Reddit myself for years, right? Like, and there have been times when it's been better for certain products, better for certain services, and a better execution versus worse execution. It, the challenge is always going to come that when you're trying something new, you probably kind of stink at it, right? Like it's brand new. You don't know what you don't know. I like to refer to it as there's a journey that we all go through. It starts off with unconscious incompetence. You don't even know what you don't know. And then, if you're fortunate, you get to a place where you're consciously incompetent. You see mistakes and you go, that was a mistake. I shouldn't have done that. And then you mature in your growth and you go, well, now I'm consciously competent, meaning we don't have the trained up skills to do this perfect, but if we have our checklist, we can do it right, right? We got an SOP, right? And then at some point, your team develops the skill set and you know what you're doing. And now you've got unconscious competence. Well, that's an expensive damn journey, right? And it's why it leads me back to the point of saying, one man's trash is another man's treasure. But what you need to do is you need to make sure that you're wringing every dollar out of every visitor that comes to your site. You're going to have the best monetization that you possibly can so that you can fund this learning curve that you're inevitably going to have, whether it's you're new to social or you're new to Reddit or whatever. So it's a great channel. It just can also totally suck.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely, and I think the brands now, because of the kind of the influence that ChatGPT has, and its requirements, and where it's searching through Reddit, is people are experimenting and trying to get up to speed, and even the agencies are getting up to speed.
Who
I don't
haven't
think
done it? Yeah.
I mean, they know how to advertise, they know how to do messaging and everything else.
But
Now
it's
it's
a
how
new
do you do
channel.
that right and do
Yeah.
it well in Reddit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's interesting. I mean, do you have many clients that are open to exploring Reddit and some of these other
we have
alternative
our
channels?
first one, and the
Okay.
funny thing is, then some of the other ones, I've got to tell them this so that they can, maybe they're thinking about it. Now, I will admit, one of our biggest clients, they have I don't know if I would say they're conservative, but they're very slow moving. And
Okay.
they
It's
have not
conservative. Yeah.
even, I don't even know if they've thought about Reddit. And my gut is that they're not even, they're not even thinking about it. And they're like a year, maybe even 2 years behind. They were so far behind on CTV. I just couldn't believe it. And so I'm afraid they may be very behind in Reddit as well.
Well, different strokes for different folks. I mean, pain has a way of motivating people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
We've been probably like you. This is not a surprise to anyone who didn't have their head in the ground, that these changes were coming. We
yeah,
started to experiment and try to figure out how to create greater visibility in AI with clients at the beginning, really in earnest, kind of middle of last year. Um, when we weren't totally guessing, it was more of like a scientific wild ass guess than it was just a total guess.
yeah, yeah,
There was some indications of like how do you get visibility. Um, and I think that put us in a really good position. We've got a client who, by the end of the year, stepped back and said, "Okay, well, we need to get serious about this AI visibility." And I said, "Hey, great news! You're already showing up as a mention or a citation in 78% of the searches." And after looking at like thousands of potential queries, we're like, dude, you totally dominate. You're welcome. We were experimenting with you, and apparently we figured it out. I think the ones that are, trying new stuff are probably going to have a real distinct advantage over companies like the one that you mentioned, because I don't know how easy it is to retrain. I mean, I just don't know. This whole thing's new. How easy is it
yeah.
to retrain ChatGPT to start talking about your brand instead of another brand once it's already picked winners? I
Yeah,
don't know the
yeah,
answer to that.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So, what is now with ChatGPT and them now starting to infiltrate the search market and even the other ones, Claude and Perplexity and everybody else. So, Google has all these really kind of interesting tools like the Google Business Profile Optimization and whatever. How do you see those things? Being affected by the AI searches.
When it comes to local search, my answer is I don't know. I think there's a lot of speculation. I think I've seen some screenshots of some things, and to a greater extent than initially, we are seeing ChatGPT and some of these other tools start to get into areas that they weren't before. I'm not entirely sure whether that's because their products have changed or whether we as users are just getting more comfortable with it. So we're
Mm.
starting to ask a broader set of questions. And I don't know where it's going to come down. I do know that I can go to ChatGPT and I can ask a local question where, find a local plumber and it will give me an answer. Um, I, so, at the moment I'd say, I don't know, is what I would say. But I hesitate to think that Google will relinquish their dominance without a fight.
Yeah, well,
Um,
that's for
and
sure.
so,
Well, and
so
I
I,
think they're doing okay. I mean,
yeah, I think
although
you're too.
they've made a couple of interesting changes. It seemed to used to be just a couple of months ago, you do a search and then you'd have Google AI overview and then you'd have the sponsored links and then the organic. And now they're putting the sponsored links at the top and then they're giving you the Google AI overview and then the organic links. And I don't know if that was the way it was all the time or they realized that, hey, we got to put some sponsored links up here because people aren't clicking on them.
I mean, that's where their money is. Well, yeah,
Yeah,
that's where they
absolutely.
make the money. So, look, you can always assume that their advertising dollars are going to have a big voice at the table, right?
Yeah, funny how
But
that
as far,
works.
yeah, funny how it works that way. I think, look, if I was a local business, if I was a business that predominantly focused on local, I would absolutely continue to do local SEO, right? Like, I mean, like I wouldn't suddenly throw out the baby with the bathwater. I, I think at least for now, your Google listing, your Google local listing is still killer. It's still important. Um, I think people have to do some things differently, even if they are uh, somewhat speculative. I do think that they are going to need like a local business. Let's say you're a local, oh, I don't know, a local plumber, right? I think if you've been blogging and things like that, I think those blogs are de facto worthless today unless you go back and you say, you know what, we're going to rewrite every single one of our pieces and we're going to actually raise the bar internally. We're going to lock in on our architecture, make sure it is rock solid around kind of a pillar cluster strategy to make sure we are uh, locked in on our focus. And I think taking those blog posts from 1,000 or 1,200 words and turning them into 3,000 word pieces that are truly authoritative, whether I'm in Reno or whether I'm in Atlanta, that piece I'm going to read it. I'm going to go, well, damn, I know a lot about that topic now, right? Include some video shorts in it, include
Mm.
external links, even to some competitors, maybe out of market competitors, but like really, Google says good GEO is good SEO. Well, you know what? Go back to your SEO as a local business and go, you know what? We're going to have to raise the bar and we're going to do some great SEO. I think that is the safest bet for a localized business to kind of call a fire insurance, right? To like say, I need to make sure that if these AI engines really start getting used for local services, that I have pre-positioned myself, because I promise you the plumber down the street is probably not thinking about it, right? Like, so I would be really proactive, and that's what I would do if I was a local business right now.
Yeah, but that then says that the plumber down the street, and nothing against plumbing,
Yeah, no, we're just
They
picking on plumbers for a minute.
they do a great job when you need them.
Yep.
And but if I am a single plumber trying to get some business out of search
Yeah, you can do it. Yeah.
versus a group, the group is going to then just win better and faster because of that.
Yeah, they are. They are. We internally we have developed. We're a couple weeks away from like releasing it full scale to all of our clients. But as I mentioned last year, we started really, really working on how do we help clients with this visibility stuff. And most of our clients have do less than $25 million a year in revenue, right? So
Yeah,
they're they're not massive businesses. Um, and so we have been working on a lot of internal AI tools and in-house technology that will allow us to help a business like that massively scale, but they're still going to need an agency to do it, right? Like that individual plumber's not got time to sit down and crank out authoritative content. He's running a business, right? So I
yeah.
still think even there's solutions, but they're going to the guy or gal who's been doing this solo on their own probably is going to struggle if they don't get some help.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, interesting. It's kind of well, it's definitely I don't know if I'd call it a wild, wild west, but certainly
Oh,
some new
I think
games are
that's
in town.
yeah. I mean, this is look, best case scenario, we all are learning on the fly, right? Like it's changing so fast. And I do think that's where agencies have an advantage, right? Because we spend all day
Yeah,
evaluating this. We've got case studies. We've got, hey, I tried this with this client and it worked. Let me apply it over here. Like, an individual business. I would say for a small to medium sized business, it's probably never been more important than for them to get with an agency because
yeah,
the idea of trying to figure it out and you're a use case of one,
yeah.
like it's just going to take you forever to figure out how to do this well.
Well, and
Um,
run your business. So it
yeah,
ain't.
yeah. I mean, they're not. It's almost as you point out, and almost impossible, right? Like
Yeah,
a larger firm that might have an internal marketing team might be able to do this a little bit better, but a typical small business with less than $25 million a year, they read a blog post at one time and they're going to try something. They watch the video and they're going to try something. They don't really have a body of they're like I said,
yeah,
they're use case one. It's just too hard,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. I'd love to keep going, but I do have one or two more kind of questions. One
Yeah.
is, so what do you think is the one thing that's gonna, I don't know, change marketing over the next few years due to AI?
I think on the e-commerce side, it's probably going to be the development of apps that basically do the shopping for us. We have up to this point, we have seen AI really on the supply side, right? The supply of information, the supply of visibility. It's really been it hasn't really been consumer focused without, unless you consider it just like information, right? To me, that's just a better librarian, right? Like, I think what you're going to see is, just like you saw like Instacart and you saw, DoorDash and different businesses come into play that said, hey, I can do the shopping for you. Or I can go at least go get it for you and bring it to you, right? I think the next big change is going to be when entrepreneur tech companies, whatever, start developing capabilities that are really on the consumer side, right? Where it's like I'm now going to use AI for fulfillment, right? Like
Hmm.
on the buyer side of things. I don't think we know what that's going to look like, but you can be sure that if I can go to Instacart and I can fill a cart and have someone deliver it to me, it is not that far down the road where I can have Instacart do the shopping for me. Where I
Hmm.
don't have to sit there and put all the items in my cart, where I'll be able to just go, hey, you know what I like? Go shop for me. I think that's inevitable.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Interesting. Yeah, well, I definitely think that that is going to, be a moving force for certain. And certainly for the kind of the standard stuff, why should I type in paper towels and toilet paper and Kleenex and
That's
blah,
right.
blah, blah? Just
You know
say,
what's
hey, I
interesting
need,
about that? What's going to get tricky, Guy, is now on the supply side. How does the supplier, the retailer, think about influencing the buyer if the buyer is not even a human? Right?
yeah,
All of a sudden, things get very, very, very interesting. You're gonna be talking about product feeds to AI engines, right? Like that's already a thing, right? Shopify and others have, already developed, a means for retailers to start supplying product feeds to these engines. So all of a sudden, you're gonna have, a supplier who's marketing to a machine, right? Like if you will, it's not even gonna be marketing. It's gonna be uh, it's just a wholly different world,
yeah,
right? It's more
yeah,
about this.
yeah.
I'm gonna make Guy really want my product. Guy's not even shopping. He's got an app that does it, right? Like that's gonna be an interesting world.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And how do you influence that app?
Mhm.
Last question, and that is so what advice would you give an up and coming new marketer given the new environment where AI is almost a competitor of those of them?
Yeah. Um, First and foremost is that I would just say, look, shift happens, right? So get used to that. Um, it's going to happen faster than it used to happen, right? So, like, I think AI is going to there's going to be a long road in front of us with lots and lots of turns and twists. Get real right out of the gates, get comfortable with that. Digital marketing hadn't really changed for like 20 years. I mean, like a little bit. Okay, you got YouTube and you had social networks, but like not in this kind of way. So I think people need to get real comfortable real fast that we're on an unsteady ground for a very long time. Number one. Number two, I would say that you're optimizing your brand visibility not for Google, but across lots and lots of platforms. There's a lot more
Mhm.
fragmentation.
Yeah.
So if if that's the case, then I think there's a need for greater and greater specialization. So don't try to be all things to all people, even internally. I have a general rule that I like to employ when I'm starting businesses, which is to focus on one product in one channel for 1 year. Like figure something out. Right? Like when you have figured something out, you have space to go figure a second thing out. The temptation is, well, because I need to get good at a bunch of different things, I'm gonna start trying to dabble in everything. I think you need to be prepared that that's coming. I think you need to be prepared that things are going to change, but you still have to operate with a degree of focus and discipline about getting good at something. Bobby Knight, the famous crazy basketball coach from Indiana, once said, "The key to success in athletics is the same as it is in life. Do what needs to be done when it needs to be done, as well as you can do it, and do it that way all the time." So as a
Mhm.
marketer, you're going to have to be disciplined, figure out what that thing is that you're going to get good at, and just freaking get good at it. And then be prepared to know that you're going to have to move on to other stuff. You're not going to be able to say, well, I'm great at Google and 95% of searches start there, so I'm good. Like once you get good at it, you're going to have to move on to get good at something else. But don't lose focus.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Well, listen, Tim, awesome. I learned a lot, and it's interesting to really see how AI is affecting one of the in at least in the past one of the most effective channels
Yeah.
that marketers have, and that's search, and it's so critical because it's a totally different mindset when I'm on my laptop or on the phone or well not on the phone but watching TV or whatever, the ads are coming at me. Whereas search, I am actively participating in the
Yeah. Yeah.
in it, and so that means that the result that you get is so much more valuable. And thank you for the insights there. So, where can folks learn more about you and White Peak Marketing?
Sure. Well, we're located online, obviously, at whitepeak.io. We our approach is we don't really sell our services. Our approach has always been that someone can come to our site, they can schedule time to sit down with me or another one of our team members, and we'll essentially have a conversation much like this, but about a given their business. And we're perfectly content to give away really helpful, useful information, action items, things that someone can take and say, hey, that was 20 minutes, 30 minutes, super well spent. I've got some things I can do. So people should just visit our site and schedule some time. We'd be happy to provide some of that free help. If at some point someone says, man, I think you could do this better than me, or I really don't have time to do it, great. We've already got our foot in the door with building a relationship, and we can go from there. But yeah, just visit us online and spend some time with our team.
Fantastic. So, so for everybody, it's whitepeak.io, whitepeak.io. And for the audience, please stay tuned for many more of these videos and episodes on the backstory and marketing and AI. And if you'd like to find out more about my book, which is getting close, visit marketingmachine.prorelevant.com. Thank you so much, Tim. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.